Yeah, I can imagine. And I think it's also fair to say that for a lot of people like myself, Workstation or back in the days, VMware Server was probably one of the first products they got introduced to. They installed it on the desktop and, they started playing around with it, and people get excited and they come up with all of these crazy use cases, right? I know back in the days I worked for Oracle and we started looking for a way to provide our support engineers additional access to operating systems. Instead of having 1,000 servers running, we could provide these desktops with new operating systems, with databases, et cetera, to our support engineers, and that was a great solution. But I'm guessing there are more crazy use cases you've heard from customers. So I would like to hear, about some of those use cases, because I think some of them may surprise us and, well, probably our listeners as well.
Sure. Well, we have our sort of bread and butter use cases, which, we put into sort of three main buckets, which is, IT professionals who need to run another operating system. Those can be, support folks, or pros who are, running what used to be full stack type applications back in the day, right? Linux server, LAMP stack, etc. We have developers who are using some computer and they need to build something on some other computer, right? So I have a Mac and I need to build a Windows app, or I have a Windows machine and I need to build cloud services, or something else inside of a Linux VM or a container. And then you sort of have this, what we call the productivity user. It's like I have a Mac and I want to use, Windows applications like Visio and things like that. So those are your sort of bread and butter use cases. And there are absolutely some crazy ones out there. What's really challenging is that, when you ask, well, what are the use cases of Workstation? It's like, well, it can do, like, you're running a computer inside a computer, so it can do everything that a computer can do. So what are the use cases of a computer, right? And that's sort of where it gets to. Now, there are a lot of folks that are doing things like, for example, on Mac OS, they use VMs to do device enrollment testing. So you can test like a system profile on a virtual machine that looks like real hardware. And then you can go ahead and, okay, this process that we've created is going to work well on physical, and you don't have to spend all that time on physical devices imaging them over and over again. You test it in a VM, and then you can go ahead and deploy it. And likewise in Windows, you can use that to build your sort of sysprep images, test out your deployment scripts, things like that. There are some real wild ones though. So here's one that's fun. One of our bigger partners, they work in a medical industry. They produce machines and so they have, like, for example, assembly lines, like mechanical assembly lines for chips and parts and all this other stuff. But then they create products that are for the medical industry. So this one solution allows you to have a Linux desktop, like a PC that's got, Linux on it, that runs a Windows virtual machine that's running in with 3D graphics acceleration, that has a touch screen on it, and it's used for surgeons who are on a surgery floor, and so that they can run up this little, like, roving kiosk, on wheels, touch the screen and have a 3D visualization of their patient's kneecap or whatever they're looking at, and they can scroll around with their hand and do it. And they never know that the VM's in there; it's managed and whatnot. But it's one of those cases where that is it's a really weird one. Another one out there is, I don't want to let out the company name, but when developing like the COVID vaccine, of the variety of companies that worked on that, Fusion got used to help train ML related learning algorithms, because they needed basically a Linux type of thing inside of what they had in their Mac inventory with their researchers. And so, Fusion got used to help make some of the vaccines. It helps surgeries on the floor. The type of applications are really crazy, especially now because, like, hardware is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, right? Like, you have these sort of Intel Next Unit of computing things that you can run ESX or you can run Linux and put Workstation on it. And, with the same hypervisor under the hood, you can really kind of get very similar performance levels. Management's a little different, of course, but it's really, really impressive, some of the crazy things that people do. I mean, I could go on and on and on.